This is Let's Talk Best Intentions, all things wealthy, healthy, happy.
Oh, do you think that's a bit cheesy?
Yeah, but I quite like it.
Hi everyone, we are back after a very short hiatus because the lovely Tara did a bit too many exercises in her circuits last week and managed to strain her neck, so we couldn't actually do the episode. But we're back.
Got full movement back.
Excellent, glad to hear it. So apart from that, how's your week been, Tara?
It's been all right. Been a bit sad to be having to sit inside when it's been so nice and sunny outside, but it is what it is, and I'm kind of just grateful to be fit and well and down in the Isle of Wight, which is a pretty nice place to be, looking at the sea if I'm not allowed to be sailing on it.
Nice.
How about you, Mel? How are you?
Yeah, it's been good. Work's still quite busy, which I'm very grateful for because I think I'd go a bit stir crazy otherwise. And nice to have the sun shining into the flat, even though we don't have outside space to go and sit and enjoy it. So it's slightly killing me that I can't read my book in the sunshine. But otherwise, we're doing okay. So yeah, not too bad.
It's one thing that I've found, I don't know if you've had this, but my random general knowledge has increased dramatically with all of the quizzes that I'm doing now.
So many pub quizzes.
But yeah, it's great. I mean, I don't think I knew what the medical term was for hangover. In fact, I've forgotten it now, but I definitely got wrong. The medical term hangover begins with V. It's a very long word. I think.
Nice. I'm glad you're taking all of this information in from all the quizzes.
Storing it. I mean, all very useful stuff, I have to say.
Definitely.
Favourite one. What is something that the Queen never travels without, ever?
Is it her corgis?
No, I actually said underwear, but apparently that was not the correct answer. And the correct answer is a black outfit in case someone dies.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Slightly dark, but practical.
Always prepared for the worst.
Yeah. We did Zoom beer pong this week for the first time, which actually worked really well. So you set up at both ends, and you set up theirs as well at the other end, so that when you throw the balls in, they know which one they've got to drink in the other house, and then you have the same at yours. But it was great fun, really good.
I love it.
Another quarantine activity for you to try.
Well, I will have to suggest that to my friends because I think I'm a bit sick of these these quizzes. I'm really not very good at them. I'll suggest beer pong.
Like from a lot of people, where at the start everybody was so enthusiastic, and I was like, "Oh, another pub quiz! I can't do anymore."
The other quite fun thing, well, it was a week ago today, and we're going to do it again today. Was getting everyone in the community to ask us questions about money. That was pretty fun, and getting everyone's responses in terms of what their big money tips were and their big money questions. And I quite enjoyed getting some of the responses we had, and there was some trickle through. It did jump a few. People were I don't think it quite went viral, but it definitely
one day.
but one thing that that kind of came to me when I was sort of thinking about doing that is that it is so important for us to be talking about money and to be open and sharing and asking questions and learning from each other. But I guess there will be people asking the question of why that's so important, and I don't know whether you wanted to share your thoughts on why you think talking about money is so very important.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's one of those weird things for some reason where as a society it has never been talked about. You know, if you think back to school, we were never taught what to do with our finances, or what taxes are, or what loans are, or what credit cards are. And I don't know a lot of people whose parents were also kind of giving them financial education as well. So, you know, you get into this scenario where you've come out of uni and you don't really know anything about finance, but suddenly you need to do everything yourself. And I know that, you know, I made a really bad decision when I got to the end of uni and I was offered a free overdraft, and I spent it on a holiday. and I had a lovely time and it was great. And then I spent a year and
Where
a half.
Did you go?
I went to Fuerteventura with my like hockey team from uni. I mean, it was brilliant, really good.
It's good
Okay. But yeah, I spent a year and a half paying that overdraft off when I moved to London, you know. And you know, it's not just the money, it's the stress that comes with that as well. When your paycheck lands in your bank account and you get 100 or 200 pounds in the plus, and then, you know, 3 or 4 days in, that's gone again. So for me, I hadn't really engaged, hadn't really thought about it, didn't understand the kind of negative impact it can have when you don't have control over it as well. And I count myself quite lucky that as a friendship group, you know, we are quite open about our finances and always have been. I think, you know, we've known each other since we were 10 years old, so that kind of comes with the territory. So when we were first living in London, it was kind of like we would always talk about the fact that we had no money, but the conversations that we didn't have were, you know, what should we be doing with this money? Should we not be going to the pub, going into our overdraft more? Should we be thinking about our futures? And to be honest, that never came up. So I think there's this really big gap of knowledge that if you don't speak to it about with anybody, you've got these silos of everyone with the same challenges and the same issues, continuing with the same behaviors, and things don't really get any better. Whereas if you can be a lot more open and honest about it, and you realize that, you know, the 4 people at the pub that you're sat with can't afford to be here either, and you could maybe have had dinner at home instead, you can just make kind of much better money choices. I don't know what your experience has been.
That's exactly the same. I mean, I started talking to people about money when we first started doing Best Intentions, and it was incredible how similar the challenges are that people are experiencing, and that it just seemed at the time so bizarre to me that within the same friendship group, I mean, we were a lot less open about money in fairness, but within the same friendship group, people were thinking, I can't really afford this, I can't keep up with that, I can't afford to go to this place, but I don't want to be the one who says I should, you know, let's drink at home instead of going out, or why don't we cook dinner in instead of going to that restaurant. And you know, empowering people to be honest about that, I think is really half the battle. There's this whole comparison thing, I think, particularly in cities, where you look at the next person, you know, over from you who's maybe going out a bit more, or you know, buying more expensive things or shopping more, and you want to keep up with that. And particularly if you're seeing them all the time, if they're in your friendship group, that can really be quite challenging. But be honest about what you can afford, and be honest about what you need and want, and talk to people if you're struggling, because your friends will be there for you through thick and thin, and that includes financial troubles as well.
Yeah, definitely. You might have something too.
yeah. But no, it's definitely a big part of what we want to do, and, you know, hopefully get everyone talking about it. Every Friday we're going to ask some people what their big money questions are and what their tips are. So if that comes to you, then please get involved and share with us, because if you've got any questions that we can answer, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So speaking of, lots of questions have come to us, but some really topical ones around savings accounts. And as we all know, it's the new financial year, new tax year. Isn't that exciting?
Very exciting.
Whole new world of ISAs available for you. 20 grand you can save into an ISA over the next 12 months. And there are huge varieties, different shapes and sizes to choose from, whether that's a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA. But before I say ISA one more time, or I might say it one more time, Mel, do you know how ISAs work? I feel like it's a word we use all the time about, well, if you save, you should use one. If you're investing, you should use one. But I don't know if it's really clear about exactly how they work.
So this is actually something that I've really struggled with. So I've had ISAs for years now, and I still haven't kind of worked out where this crazy tax-free money seems to come from if you wrap it in an ISA. So I did some research this week in preparation to make sure that I could actually understand how it works. And what it is where the money that you wrap in the ISA, it means that you don't get charged any tax on the interest that goes into that account. If you don't have it wrapped in the ISA, it means that that money will go to the government. So it literally is free money. And one thing that I've kind of struggled with when it comes to ISAs is, you know, interest rates in general are quite low. So it doesn't seem like a lot of money when you're looking at the interest rates, but this is really something about building up your future. So you get an ISA allowance every single year. So making the most of that will have a huge impact in 10, 20, 30 years time. And that's only something that I've recently managed to wrap my head around. And because before I was kind of like, does it come out of my paycheck? Am I going to get sent it in a check in the post? You know, where is this money? But that's kind of the mechanism for how ISAs work, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, and it is a small amount if you think about the interest rate you're actually earning on a cash ISA, but you get exactly the same mechanism working in a stocks and shares ISA, where you don't get paid tax on the amount of money you earn through gains in the stock market, and that can be a lot more significant. So it might seem like a small amount of money, as you say, it'll compound over time to be worth quite a bit. You know, particularly with interest rates so low, as Tesco say, every little helps. But taking that one step further and moving into the stocks and shares ISAs, it'll have a really big impact.
Okay, cool, good.
Yeah. So I'm actually, straight after this, it was a really good reminder, I'm going to set up my new ISA and get that ready for some regular savings.
Nice, and I will do the same because I haven't set my new one up yet.
Okay, good, done.
Good. Okay, next question. So with everything that's been going on recently, you know, we've gone from kind of business as usual to people perhaps being on furlough, having changes in salary, feeling a bit more insecure about the future. Are there any like practical tips or like maybe a health check in terms of finances that people can do to make sure that they've got that awareness and they can make better decisions with their money at times like these?
Yeah, I think finances are complicated, they're not that fun, and there's a lot of moving parts when you think about what you should be doing with your money. And it's really difficult to give catch-all advice to people and say, well, in the topic of money you should be doing X. But there are probably broadly 3 things that I would say are a simple journey to take yourself through to do a sort of simple health check. The first is, do you have any what we call bad debt? And that is high interest paying debt that isn't giving you a benefit in future. And so what I mean by that is credit cards where you're paying an interest, overdrafts that you're paying an interest on. It could be store cards as well. So those or payday loans, those are the classic killer when it comes to high interest debt. And if you have any of that, you should be really doing everything you can to pay that down as quickly as possible. That interest will just rack up and rack up and rack up, and it's not a fun spiral to be in. So focus your attention there if you have any of that. What I would just caveat that with is, I don't mean mortgages. I don't mean, say, loans on cars that you need to get to work or those types of debt. That's what we would classify as good debt. And it's, if it's helping you increase your future earnings or giving you a benefit in future that offsets the cost, then that's okay. The second stage of the health check would be, are you putting money aside on a regular basis into a savings account? And if you aren't, then maybe you should think about starting. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you know, I can't afford to, I get to the end of the month and I don't have any money left. But I can promise you, having more money doesn't make you better with it. And that's been proven time and time again, where people win the lottery and then are broke 5 years later. Or, you know, really famous people have got themselves into terrible financial situations because they just increase their outgoings as their income increases, and that's just also a terrible spiral. So even if it's just £5 a month or as much as you can afford, just think about, you know, £5 a month, that's one fewer pints, it's maybe not going shopping as, you know, that one little extra item when you're going shopping. Just try and put that aside and build those habits now, because you will really benefit from that in future when your earnings hopefully are higher, and you've got those strong habits.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sorry to interrupt, is that doing it at the start of the month is the best time to do it as well. So just as Tara said, you know, even if when you get to the end of the month and there's no money, that can still happen as much as you're earning. So make sure that you move that money over as soon as you get paid.
Yeah, and we've heard from you know, people in the community over the last week about what they do to combat this whole overspending through the month thing, and even putting your treat budget into a different account, so you know that that's the amount of money you have to spend on treats, and that you can't go over that once it's done. So once it's done, it's done, and then you have to wait till next month to have your treats, and you've put your savings somewhere else, so you definitely can't touch them. The third step on the journey, and the third tip that I would say to look for in this health check is, are you getting started on your investing journey? I talked about stocks and shares ISAs earlier, but if you haven't got any bad debt, you are putting money aside, why not start your investing journey? You can get started with just £1, and now doesn't seem like a terrible time, given we've just had a big market fall. Everything is looking what we would call cheaper in the markets. You know, there's a lot of technicalities to go into with that, but really the simple truth is, now's a good time to start getting invested if you haven't done already. Get started with a little amount, get used to it, get comfortable with it, and then maybe look at increasing that through time.
Nice.
So yeah, that's my little health check. I know it seems like I'm making it sound like it is easier than it is, but I think those are 3 broad things that you should be looking at. But what I would say the most challenging aspect of all of that is reducing your spending enough to be able to achieve those 3 things. And one of the things that we've heard from the community is that buying things does bring people joy. And so I suppose one of the questions to you, Mel, is what purchases bring you joy, and how do you manage to sort of control that versus savings?
Yeah. So I love spending money on food. Honestly, it's where most of my money goes. I love getting takeaways from Deliveroo. That brings me joy. I don't spend very much money on clothes ever. That is just not something that's particularly important to me. Same with kind of like shoes and handbags. That's just kind of not my thing. I've got to the point now, I think, you know, I'm kind of quite well into my money journey where I get a lot of joy from saving money. So like, you know, seeing that money kind of build up in my bank account makes me happy. And I can be perfectly happy now not going to the most expensive restaurants. You know, if I'm going to the pub with my friends and instead of getting a meal I get a snack or something, that's totally fine with me as well. So yeah, all of my money goes on food and the rest of it goes into savings.
I think that's a really interesting point to bring out to people, because I don't think any of us, well, certainly I'm not, and I don't think you are either, saying, well, saving money is the most important thing, and you have to cut out all fun for the benefit of saving money for some arbitrary thing in future that you may or may not want to do. I think it's all about figuring out what the things are that you really value, that you really want to spend your money on, and what you potentially could do without, or could supplement for something that doesn't cost that much. And for you, it's, you know, having nicer food, and it's not spending lots of money on shopping. And you know, for me, I'd far rather go on a, you know, big holiday and have all that than shopping. I'm the same as you. Having expensive clothes and handbags isn't something that brings me lots of joy, whereas being able to go on a big 2-week holiday to a really cool part of the world that I've never been to before is really important. And so that's what I prioritize my savings towards.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I never did before. I never made conscious decisions about where my money was going. I would do everything that anybody asked me to go and do with them. And now I'm kind of like, no, unless it's something that I really want to do, let's do something else. Let's do something that doesn't cost money, and you can do that with somebody who would find that worthwhile. Because for me now, wasting money really annoys me. You know, when I spend money and I regret it, that really winds me up. So I do everything in my power to kind of stop that from happening. But you know, we talk about this a lot, where it's not about being perfect all of the time. And you know, we talk about money a lot, and we're still, you know, definitely not the best, and we still have days where we make bad choices, and that will always be the case. But it's really kind of that balance. But yeah, if it was anything, it's kind of think consciously about, genuinely, you know, when you look at your bank account and the purchases that you make, where that really makes you happy, and then cut down on that stuff and maybe move that into your savings.
I think about it exactly the same way as I think about dieting. I have all of sounds cheesy, of all of the best intentions when it comes to eating healthily, and I'd say most of the time I do eat pretty healthily, but I will have days where I don't, and I'll feel a bit bad about it, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it, and then you just get back on the bandwagon and you carry on. But I'd be really interested to hear, because you say wasting money really annoys you, and I suppose we're jumping all over the place a little bit on topics, but how do you feel? I know you've started your investing journey. How does it make you feel to see when you've lost money through investments going down, as opposed to, you could lose money by spending it on stuff that you don't need, but also you've got that which you've got slightly less control over, I suppose?
Yeah. So my investing journey's been an interesting one. I was one of those people who was got very overexcited about the cryptocurrency era that thankfully we are slightly out of now. Don't take any lessons from me on this. Where I got very overexcited about everybody talking about these massive kind of wins and gains, and I was like, great, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to buy my first house by putting £500 into Bitcoin. I mean, this is genuinely where my brain went with this stuff. And, you know, within 3 or 4 weeks, I think that had halved, and it's still, I've lost 50% of the amount of money I put into that, which, you know, is quite a large sum of money, particularly when I was relatively early on in my investing journey. And that was just like the gulp moment for me. And I think there's definitely better ways to learn about investing, but that one really kind of hit me quite hard.
Maybe learn from Mel's mistakes.
Don't try it yourself. But it did teach me how the markets kind of work, where, you know, you can think one way and the complete opposite can happen. It's completely out of your control. You know, everybody was saying that it was going to make loads of money, and it didn't, you know, and things were changing all of the time. So that was really, I found that really stressful. And that was not a diversified portfolio. And this is something that we talk about in our workshops and also our events when we can get them back on track. You know, it's all about not putting your eggs in one basket, and that was exactly what I did. So now when it comes to my investing that's is diversified and, you know, is in trackers and ETFs, I know what that emotional reaction is like, and I can kind of remind myself that this is all part and parcel of the journey. Luckily it's less extreme than the one that I'd already been through, but that gut wrenching of when you open the app and see that something's on minus 20% and you think, oh my god, this is horrendous, that money isn't lost money. You know, it's an emotional reaction to what you're looking at on the screen, but, you know, we can't kind of drill this enough that if you're investing, it's a long-term investment strategy. And unless something else has changed, then you still have the same goals and you still have the same approach. Therefore, you shouldn't really be going anywhere near it. But there's a real difference between emotionally experiencing it and rationally knowing what the right thing to do is, and that's a learning that everybody has to go through, and it's probably a feeling that never goes away either.
And it's something that people will be feeling. People who started on their investing journey will have definitely felt over the last couple of months, because it has been a really difficult time in markets, but the reality is the bottom is the worst place to sell, and that's where you end up crystallizing or realizing the losses, and so the best thing you can do is just not look at it. Look away. Don't look at the news when they're talking about what's happened to markets. Just ignore it and look at it again in 2 years' time. And so long as your portfolio is diversified, so long as you're investing money that you can afford, that you don't need over the next 3 to 5 years, and just put it to one side, let it do its thing. It will go up and down, but on average over the long term it will be going up.
So don't worry if you're feeling that horrendous emotional reaction that that happens.
We all do.
All right, so our next question from the community is around bank accounts. So moving slightly on to more practical sides of things. There are lots of deals, it seems, all of the time. I see them on the tube, or I did before we kind of stopped commuting, talking about if you change bank accounts, you can get £100 or £200 or whatever it is. Is it worth changing bank accounts?
The simple answer is yes. There is no value in having loyalty to a bank, really. I mean, when was the last time that a bank ever did anything above and beyond for you? And really the game that they're playing is trying to attract new customers and then relying on the fact that you will experience inertia and not want to move, and they don't have to worry about keeping old customers happy. That's the reality of it. There may be some exceptions, but by and large that's the case. And what you will be seeing, or what you will see if you look into this, is pretty much every bank account provider, new or old, will be offering some sort of switching benefits. That could be actually cold hard cash. You switch your current account to us, we will give you £200. It's as simple as that. Or it could be through rewards, getting cash back when you pay out your bills from their account. Or it could be giving you access to a savings account with a higher interest rate than what you're getting now. But the truth of it is there is really no benefit in having loyalty to a bank, so definitely look into it. Money Saving Expert breaks it down really nicely in terms of which bank accounts, which banks are offering different deals, and you can pick the one that is right for you. So yeah, I'd say it's 100% worth it. It's super easy as well with the new, well, it's not even that new anymore, current account switch service. They have to process it automatically for you. So I did it probably coming up to a year ago now, and you set up the new account and you say, yes, current account switch service, and then the two banks speak to each other, they switch you over. They don't only put the money in, but they also switch over all of your direct debits, all of your recently paid to contacts and everything. It's so easy. But what I would also say to do is the next step on from that, set a calendar reminder for a year later, because undoubtedly a lot of the benefits that you will get from switching accounts, particularly if it's a high savings interest rate, you'll probably lose that after a year or after a certain amount of time. So make sure you're diarising doing those switches and getting the most out of it. If you have the time, I think it's definitely worth the hassle.
Yeah, I would second that. I also did it, I think, a year ago or so, and it was super easy and great. And yeah, then the money turns up in your account and it's lovely.
It's
and
so
save
nice.
it. Don't spend it.
Right. Well, so we've got, actually that's a really, really good connecting point to the last question, which we also had from the community last week, which was just around saving and spending and thinking about money, given everything is pretty uncertain, and future earnings are less secure for a lot of people at the moment. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety, even people who are still in work, you know, what that's going to look like in future. How long are we going to be in lockdown, and is the company that I currently work for going to exist when we get out the other side of it? And I can see that's quite difficult to people. So one thing I would say is focus on what you can control. I was actually reminded of this advice this week actually, and it's a really, really good thing to remember, is you can only control what you can control, and that goes for the whole situation that we're in right now. And there's really no value in worrying about things that are out of your control. But we do have a lot of things in our control, and the amount of money we're spending on discretionary goods is one of them. And you know, whether that's online shopping, whether that's food shopping, Mel, or wine shopping for me. Those are levers we can pull really easily to be honest with ourselves about, you know, do we really need this, or would I be potentially quite grateful for this money in a few months if I am in a difficult situation and potentially not earning as much money as I was before. So remembering that. But then there are some slightly bigger levers that you can pull also, which are a little bit more challenging. One of them is obviously rent. If you're renting a place, and particularly in London, but really anywhere, that's going to be one of the biggest drains on your income. Ask yourself a question, you know, what is the situation there? Do you need to be renting that place? Can you get out of it? Is there another option if you needed to stay somewhere? And giving yourself some flexibility there could be something you could look at as well. And connected to that, bills, switching to the most cost-effective bills provider, gas, electricity, internet. If you've got some time on your hands now, looking into that could save you quite a bit of money. Definitely lots of deals going on with gas and electricity providers. Also, I'm sure internet providers as well. So I would suggest looking into those. Have you got any thoughts on where people could pull back their spending?
I mean, it's kind of a reiteration on last week, which is, you know, have a look at any recurring spends that you have. You know, could you live without Spotify for a month? Netflix maybe not right now.
Definitely.
On the like internet provider side, you know, if a lot of people will be over a year into their contract, they will renegotiate all of them, and they will drop those prices. So anything that you've been with for a year, it's a really good time to kind of negotiate and see if you can find some extra pennies there as well. Yeah, I think those are the definite things.
It also goes without saying, make sure that you've looked into any support that you're eligible for from the government, because they are doing quite a lot to help people who are in vulnerable positions and in having job insecurity. So look into that and make sure that you know everything that you're eligible for. But on the plus side, at least there isn't any FOMO to be had, because no one's doing anything. So you're not missing out, that's for sure. So drawing in those spends, it's probably no better time than now to do it.
Yes, definitely. I got very aggressive on my saving this month when I knew I wasn't going to be going out for dinners and going out for drinks before I ended up just spending it online shopping because I'm a bit bored. So definitely done that. Cool. Well, I think that's all of the questions that we had from the community this week. As always, we will be back next week, injuries permitting. So get your
I'll take it easy this weekend.
Yeah. So get your questions in. You can follow us on Instagram at All Our Best Intentions. And we just absolutely love to hear from any of you, any problems that you're facing, any challenges, anything that we can help with. All right. Thanks for listening.
Let us know. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.